Hi, this is Dorcas, Monari, or Dottie, as many of you know me. And yeah, today I'm here to Barikiwa channel to discuss about, or to have a little chat about mental health or mental awareness. And the reason why we say mental health is because when we say mental illness, it freaks people out. So that's why we prefer, if we are doing a function, if we are doing a recording or interviews or anything, you will mainly hear about mental health awareness. And so, what is mental illness? Maybe I can begin there. Mental illness is where there are chemicals in the brain. For those who don't know, you have chemicals in the brain, and that's what they call brain fluid or spinal fluid. Yeah, so it's when those chemicals are not balanced well, and that's when, if they're not well balanced as it's supposed to be for a normal human being, I can say, that's when they diagnose, the doctor says maybe you have schizophrenia, maybe you have anxiety, maybe you're suffering from bipolar depression. Those are just to name a few of mental illnesses. So, why am I here today to talk about mental health, and why is it most important to me? So, it's mainly important to me because I was diagnosed with bipolar depression back in 2011 when I moved from Africa to America, and I didn't know what that was then. Because all I remember is I was so uneasy one Saturday. Like when I came to America, there was that culture shock. Number two, I never moved far away from home, especially far away from my mother, to a place where, it's not a place that I can just board a bus or board a matatu to go see her. So I was excited coming over. Because my father was over here, and I thought, wow, if I'm going where my father is, it's gonna be fun. Oh boy, I landed here winter time, January, and I remember I received a warm welcome. I was welcomed with a purple, big feather, not leather, but a heavy coat. A purple one my dad had bought for me. So him and Eldo Nyangore, for those who know Eldo Nyangore from Faith Church. Those are the two men who picked me from the airport. And I remember Eldo Nyangore laughing at me, and I'm like, why is he laughing? And then he's like, I didn't know you were expecting such a tiny person. Oh boy, I was so tiny. I was weighing, I don't know, 100 pounds or less than 100 pounds. And at that time I was like 20 years old. So I didn't get why he was laughing. Me, all along, I knew I'm a big person. I was responsible at home, running errands after high school and all that. So when I came to America, then that's when it hit me that, oh, I'm a very tiny person for my age. Okay, so I was very excited to see snow. It was exciting. But ile baridi ilinigonga we. So we went home. We went to Eldo Nyangore's house. There was African food. So moving from Kenya to here, I didn't know there was ugali or African foods in America. So I was like, wow, what will I be eating? Maybe rice only? But when I came, I remember Mama Barongo had cooked a lot of varieties of food. That made me feel at home for once, and I was like, oh wow, if America there's all this African food, then I'll be good to go. Yeah, so we were, the Onyangore's family was very welcoming, warm welcoming, and we had dinner that night. I was excited to see my father after a very long time, and then I was shown my room. I was given my room for the first time. I wasn't sharing a room because, Akina Dani, they're only boys, and me, I'm from a family of only girls. So they gave me that courtesy of owning my own room. I don't know who room was taken from them, but yeah. So I was so excited. I had my own room, and then it was girlish, pinkish, those girlish colors. And I felt so happy. The house had carpet. Kwa nyumbani wajua ni simiti, called simiti. I don't know how it calls simiti in English, but yeah. So that made me excited and made me feel like at home. So fast forward, church. The first time I think I went to United, there was a seminar or a series that was going on with Pastor Mayor. I think I went there the first Friday and the Saturday of me being in America. So yeah, I was super excited because I knew Pastor Mayo from home. He was a pastor from Kaptembwa, those areas, for those who know Kaptembwa or Shabab back in Nakuru. He was a pastor there at some point back in the days. So I was so excited to see him. And so there was that pastor, there was my father. Those are two people that I knew very well. And then there was a boyfriend at that time. But he wasn't living in Minnesota. He was living outside Minnesota. So those are three people that I really knew in America. So that made me excited that at least I know some people. So fast forward, the cold started becoming very cold, hitting negatives. And it started making me become so uneasy. Because I have this chest problem. So when I become so cold, I start shivering. Sometimes my hands become stiff. My chest becomes heavy. So for a minute I was like, oh, hold up. Right now in Kenya it's warm. I think I want to go home and then come back in America during summer. So I started telling my dad, complaining to my dad, it's too cold. I want to go back home. I want to go back to where mom is with the rest of my sisters because I'm not comfortable here. And my dad for a minute he thought I was joking. He didn't take me to be serious. And he was like, you just came, the tickets are expensive going back home. And I was like, what do you mean the tickets are expensive? You're working so you can get me a ticket to go home. So in that midst of going back and forth with my dad, I started really becoming homesick now. I started now feeling the urge of going home because the weather here is not working for me. So I remember it was one Saturday at church, and the church was done as usual at 6. For those who are SDAs, the church is usually done at 6. And then I told my dad, you know what, I don't want to go home back. So I was being hosted at the Onyangore's place. I was like, I don't want to go back there. I just want to go home. From church, I want to go to the airport and go home. So my dad was like, what? I told you the tickets are expensive and I can't afford one right now. So that made me so mad. So I became so pissed off. Like, I didn't understand how come my dad couldn't afford a ticket for me. And the last thing I remember is me being dropped at emergency in an hospital, an emergency. And then all I can hear is the nurse asking me, do you know why you're here? Are you pregnant? Are you, those general questions they ask as somebody's being admitted. And I was like, no, I'm not pregnant. What do you mean? And then the nurse is like, okay, calm down. I'm trying to figure out why they dropped you here. And that surprised me, like, they dropped me here, so they left. So when I'm talking to this nurse, and then she tells me, okay, go sit in that certain room and wait for me there. Kidogo sitting in that room. Hey, the next thing I'm seeing police officers approaching that room. And that made me so scared. I'm like, what are the police officers coming to do? And I knew they were police because of the uniform. So I didn't know if they were security for the hospital or the police in general from outside. So they came, wewe buda. The next thing nasikia nimeshikwa na nguvu, nimedungwa sindano ingine, and that's how I slept or passed out. So I'm waking up in a ward. At home we call them a ward. Here you call them in my room. So waking up, I'm at I'm in the hospital. My clothes were changed. And then I'm like, hold up, what am I doing here? So walking outside the room or outside the ward, I get to see the nurse. And I'm like, nurse, why am I here? I need to go home. And then the nurse tells me, yeah, you can't go home. You were dropped here and we need to take care of you before you go home. So I didn't understand what she meant by taking care of me. I was like, taking care of me. So when I was there, I didn't realize that I was in a psych unit and I was taking medication for my mental health. So I was taking drugs and we were doing therapy, some activities there which were fun, which kind of made me become chill. And when you're in the psych ward, they give you like, is it one person or two person to contact outside the hospital? And if they see you are irritated by that person, what they do is to take you out away from the phone. So you can't have your personal phone. You call from a landline. So the only number I had was for my dad and for the boyfriend. So those are the two people that I used to call. So while taking those drugs, I can't really remember the name of the drugs. I think I remember only one, Depakote, Risperdal, and I don't know the others. Those are the two famous ones that I remember because one was like very huge, the Depakote, and the little one was, Risperdal was very little. And it was, I think, a red pill or something. So I used to take like, I don't know how many drugs. So when my dad came, I'm like, why am I here? And then it's like, my dad explained to me, that time you wanted to go home and I told you can't go home. So we had to take you to the hospital and that's why you're there. So you need to cooperate if you want to come out from there. So, and my dad was my best friend back then. So anything that he tells me to do, I will do it. So I was like, all I need to do is to cooperate with what the doctor says, with what the nurses say, with what the therapists say. And if I improve, they're gonna discharge me. So that's what I did. And I became stable now. I used to take my medication the way I'm given. They have to give you, I don't know if I was taking them 3 times a day or 2 times a day. I don't really remember, but yeah. So taking those drugs like that, they made me stable. They made my chemicals to balance well. And for some reason, they added me weight. I remember very well. I don't know if those pictures can be found right now, but I remember, if you ask Miss Cole, we had some pictures. Then we didn't have these fancy cameras of nowadays, but I remember there's a picture, my ex at that time, boyfriend, now he became an ex because he was being a nurse. Sorry for cussing. Yeah, so there's some pictures I had, and I remember I was gaining a lot of weight. So when I'm asking the nurse, because you have to go for evaluation every now and then, asking, and then they're like, yeah, some of the medication we gave you, they're for adding you weight to match your years. There's that thing they say, you have to look your age, or you have to appear your age, something of that sort. So that made me relaxed as a woman, because women, we don't like adding weight like crazy. So yeah, so after being evaluated, going through therapy, going through drugs, with the help of some of the church family, some of the friends that I had made from the youth choir, from the church choir, through all that help made me stabilize my mental health in 2012. Even when I was going to being evaluated, they saw change. They saw a drastic change. And I had started working. I had become independent. I could pay my bills. Where I was staying, I could pay my phone bill. And so Somewhere in 2012, they reduced the dosage of the medication, and slowly they withdrew the medication. So in 2012, I could say around March, April, I could say around May, June, when now it was warming up, I was off the meds and I was doing really good. I was going to work, I was having a social life with my friends after work. I could have a life with my friends after church. And life was fun. I remember those days, man. Life was fun, man. Right now we are really, really struggling. I don't know why, but yeah, it was fun. We used to go to work. We used to work AM, me and my friends. We used to work at the same company in Rogers. So we used to go work. When we come off, we used to get done at 2 or 3. Then we go at the park, we chill, we go shopping, we go somewhere, we eat. And life moved on. The following day, same thing. Come Friday, we are at the church with the choir singing, praise, whatever. And that was the cycle over and over. So that was 2012, 2013. So 2013, my friends, the ones who were singing together in the choir, so people started getting married, others marrying. And that's how the group that we had singing together at Faith Church started separating. Some were going for school outside state, some were getting married and moving out of state, and some just started having families, so that made them have less time for the group. And slowly that group kind of faded, and some like me who weren't married and we were just in between there, we became few, so the choir wasn't that interesting anymore. So we dodged church for a while there. For those who know us from Faith Church can attest, there's a time we disappeared. So we disappeared when everybody was doing their own, taking care of their own personal business, because everybody has their own background. So fast forward, one of my closest friend got married, and from her wedding, that's where I met my ex-husband, who's the baby's father. For those who know him, that's where we met, and that was in 2013, if I'm not wrong. 2013. So 2013, 2014, 15, and then Darrell was born 2016 June. So all between that time, 13 to 16, I was doing work. At the same time, I was going to school for my culinary art career, and my dream was to become a chef. Hey, usitake jua vile huyu Hell's Kitchen chef Ramsay inspired me back in the days. He still does. Sorry, he still does now, but now that dream for me kind of laid low because of a lot of stuff that has been going on in my health and my son's health. So when Darrell arrived in June 2016, motherhood kicked in. I reduced my working hours. Now I started working for my ex-husband's company, which was trucking. So that's how I got into trucking. Everything was going on okay, marriage okay, motherhood okay, sisterhood okay. My 2 sisters had already joined me by that time. Excuse me. So everything was going per God's plan, I can say, and per my plan and the family back home. So everything was going smooth. The relationship between my sisters was good. The relationship between my parents was good. And the friendship that I'd built, the community was good. So fast forward, when Darrell was turning 2, that should be 2017 October, around October there, he started becoming sick. And he was in Kenya visiting, so the plan was him to go to Kenya and study there. But he started becoming sick. That's when he started showing signs and symptoms of staggering. And I was wondering, why is my son staggering? He never staggered. Ever since he started walking, he was walking straight. And a little bit, as time went by, he stopped walking completely. And that's when it was alarming that my son is in danger, because I had taken him to Aga Khan hospital in Kisumu, you know, to go to assess. They had done all the tests, because my big sister I used to work there. So they ran all the tests, the blood work, the urine, the poop sample. They couldn't see anything. So the last thing they were supposed to do is a spinal tap fluid to look at it and see. So before they did the spinal tap, I'd quit my job that I was doing. I had boarded a flight with the help of some friends, and I was in Kenya within seconds. You can imagine boarding a flight from Minnesota to Amsterdam to Nairobi. I took another flight to Kisumu, and there was my sister waiting for me. So reaching at home, my son was like a dead person. Because when I tried to call him, he could open his eyes a little bit, but he couldn't tell what he's seeing, as I can tell. So, and that really shook me as a mother. I couldn't believe that's my child. And I tried to ask my sister, what's happening? Trying to ask the maid, what's happening? And the maid, she's just like, it's his nap time, so he's taking a nap. And I was like, no, even though he's taking a nap, he can't even recognize my voice. So at that moment, we had to rush him to hospital for an emergency, to the ER, for the spinal tap now to be carried out. And Aki Mungu Africa, we are very far behind with this spinal tap thing, because you know it's a very painful test to carry on a child. And the nurse who was doing it was poking somewhere. He couldn't, I don't know, get the fluid, and then he could want to poke another place. Hey, that's when as a mother I was like, hold on a second. We can't just go continue poking, looking for fluid. If you can't find it, just leave it. Let me fly with my son to Minnesota for them to determine what's wrong. And luckily, they gave him a medication to sleep or something, and they successfully did the spinal tap. So in the spinal fluid, that's when they saw some abnormal cells. And that's when now we knew we need to act as soon as possible to see what those cells were reading. So, and we wanted to do an MRI in Aga Khan, but it was very expensive. It's the same as switching the ticket to the nearest date to fly out. And so that's the decision I made. I flew out to Minnesota, and reaching here, when we went to Park Nicollet, where his regular primary doctor was, the doctor just saw the rail like this, and they told us, move from here to Children's Hospital. I never knew in my life that there was a children's hospital in Minnesota. Me, I just knew all the hospitals were the same. Kids can be treated anywhere. So going to Children's, that's when I don't know how the people in the medical field call it, if it's called red or blue or whatever. So he was really welcomed well. He was rushed to an MRI. From the MRI, the neurosurgeon came with some paperwork. Oh man, the neurosurgeon was like, your son has 15 minutes to live. If you don't sign this paper, we're not going to be able to save him. In my life, I've never written a signature down with tears flowing to that paper. And the neurosurgeon was like, I know it's hard for you, but remember you're doing this to save your child. And that neurosurgeon was from Egypt, because yeah, you can easily tell a difference between an American and a foreigner. So I signed that paper, and I cried to God and said, in your hands, Lord, I put my son's life. Because I couldn't imagine a life without him after living with him for 2 years. And yeah, so fast forward, it was successful. They managed to drain the fluid that was accumulating pressure in his brain. And you see again, his brain now was being affected. And they came back, so they showed us the picture of the MRIs they took. And they showed a very huge mass at the back of his head. They call them tumors. So there was a very huge one that was blocking the fluid from flowing. And at that point, I felt hopeless. At that point, I felt useless. At that point, I felt like this is it. Even the God I'm praying to, I don't think he's listening at this point. But after I realized, after they drained some fluid and the fluid was flowing out the tube that they had inserted in his brain, I realized my son has started become lively. And for those who remember, that's when the community started coming to the hospital, kids started coming to cheer him up, and he was happy again, he was smiling and everything. And so it reached a point that the neurosurgeon gave us an okay to go home with him. But we needed to monitor some symptoms like stiff neck, because if he had a stiff neck and is looking at the right side, it could get stuck there and it wasn't able to return the neck back to facing forward. So we stayed home, I think one night ikuisha, and then he had the stiff neck because the kids were playing around him and he was busy playing. All of a sudden he got stuck. His head got stuck. I don't know if the right side or the left side. Again, we had to go back to the emergency. Going back to the emergency, that's when the initial date that he was being operated on was switched because it was an emergency, and the neurosurgeon had to come back from his vacation to operate on him. I really thank God for that neurosurgeon, because I don't think there are many neurosurgeons who can just quit a vacation to come save a life. I don't know if there's any who can do that, but that particular one is called Dr. Nagib. Did that for my son. And where that thing drained me, I was like, Jesus, somebody's going to open my son's brain and then he's gonna remove the mass. And then if the mass turns out to be cancerous, again, there's that huge process we have to undergo. Or the surgery can go wrong and I might lose my child. Well, guess what that was doing to my mental health? It was damaging my mental health as a mother. Because at that point, I'm like, I'm not even praying. I'm just confused. I'm in a shock. I'm in a dilemma. I don't know the state of mind I was in. But they did the operation, which went well. And they were able to remove all the mass that was accumulated at the back of his head and spine. And now the fluid could flow the right way, as a normal human being fluid can flow. So that experience of my son really, really made me reflect back on my mental health when I came back in this country. How I struggled being away from family, how I struggled being away from friends, and I'm just in this lockdown, whatever, psych unit with total strangers, and now I had to make new friends with those strangers, And this makes me think in life, we go through a lot. We face a lot of challenges, we face a lot of changes in life, and there are these people who just tell you, snap out of it. Hiyo ni kitu kidogo, mtoto kugonjeka, ni America iko na technology. In America iko na technology, but people do die in America. People do die undergoing serious surgeries. So some people were comforting. I could just wish that we become considerate on the words we say to comfort a person. Because telling a person whose child is going through a brain tumor which is cancerous, and the doctors and the nurses who are human beings are trying to save a life, for you telling a mother it's gonna be okay, this is technology, nowadays they have good technology, they're gonna pull it through, those are not the right words to use. Because at that point, you're not Jesus, you're not God, you're not even the Holy Spirit, you're just a layman's, just a normal human being trying to comfort. So we need really to know which words to use during a certain time. And I really thank God for community at large. My Kenyan community, I can't really say it's a church community. It was a Kenyan community. It was an African community. It was white people community, because those are the majority who worked as a team to help my son survive. I could really like to thank these individuals. If I could write a list, I could, but it's gonna be a very long list, because they became pillars for me to step on, because at that point where I was helpless, hopeless, in a void, in a very dark corner, without knowing tomorrow, the Kenyan community came through with prayers, comfort, games. We could play games at children's hospital. We could have social life downstairs for those who came, where our area downstairs was. And this made white people learn something. The togetherness that we Kenyans have, the love that we Kenyans have, and the way we support each other during difficulty time. These white people testified and said, oh, anytime they saw a black person walking through the doors, they could ask, are you here for Darrell? And that's how much impact of love and that the people and the community of children saw. And they were very amazed by that. And me as a mother, I felt comforted. I felt that I'm in a good place. Even though I take a break of 1 week and sleep, I know people like Frank and the family could come, make sure Darrell is okay, answer the doctors and the nurses' concerns. I didn't have that scare that my child will suffer. At that point, I was like, wow, all these people are here for my son. Even if I die, if anything happens, God forbid I die right now, there is a whole community here backing my son up. And that really helped me mentally. During that period of my son going through chemo, going through radiation, the church family, the community family was with me. They walked with me. And guess what? I wasn't using any antidepressant medication at that point. The good food that you guys were bringing over, that was helping me. The good music, the games, the motivation, you people taking me out at different treats, taking me for massages, doing nails. That was therapy. And I don't know if people knew that was therapy to me as a mother. And that really helped me. So I could wrap up this first section by saying, being there for somebody in need, even without asking why are they crying, why are they laughing extraordinary, just understanding your friend. It's very important for people who are struggling with mental illness. Without even asking, maybe we can have plans today. It's like, hey Dottie, yeah, we are going for maybe Faith's birthday party. You're coming? Yes. I'll be like, yes. I remove my outfit, I remove my makeup, I organize everything. And then some few seconds later, I'll be like, you know what? I don't feel like going anymore. Reason being, that's me. That's how I feel at that point, My mood can change at any minute. So, but having those friends who know, hey, I think Dottie's mood is changing. We need to motivate her. We must go to this birthday. Having those friends who just understand your lowest, your deepest lowest, and those who understand your very highest, and those who understand your medium, they are very important people, because you will know who to call when you are at your deepest end. And you will know who to call when you're like a very chill person. You just want to have a chill person around you. And you know who to call when you are very hyper and you want those friends who are very hype, for that moment. So I thank God for that experience. And I will finish by saying that be a brother's keeper. Be that shoulder to lean on. Be that friend. Be that brother or a sister or a parent to a child who's struggling mentally. So that through you walking by them, beside them, at any given time, helps them to cross on the other side. And